Welcome to What's the Matter, the pod and video cast where we talk about anything and everything with a psychology twist. Today is part one of a 3-part mini-series around living life with purpose. The main aim over the course of these 3 episodes is to really help you with the process of goal setting and getting the best out of life for yourself. So if you're keen and want to hear more, stay tuned. We've got a lot of good stuff coming.
I am joined, as usual, by my fabulous co-host, Mr. Dad. Hi, Dad.
Hi, Em. How's things with you?
Very well, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, lots of very interesting things going on at the moment in the COVID world that we're in.
I know.
Fascinating thing is, obviously, our stuff is the arena of psychology, mindset, attitude, and how that contributes to just about everything, actually. And on the back of a strange world that we're in, more and more people are realizing the huge importance of what's going on in their head and the challenges to that with the world circumstances. So we're fairly in demand at the minute.
We are. We're busy. Yeah. And you've pardon, sorry.
Busy on good stuff.
Yes, busy on good stuff. And I was going to say you've had a little rearrange of your office as well, haven't you? So
yeah,
you've been extra busy.
I have. Well, my I love books, and having read a significant number in my life, and I continue to, most of which are about the subject that we're in. Every now and again, I have a break and read a novel just for a bit of a break, but I do love the subject matter. And since I created the office in this home, they were all locked away in a cupboard, not locked in a cupboard, but they're in a big work cupboard. And I've got them all out now on a nice big bookshelf. And I'm sure I get learning by osmosis just by letting the books stare at me.
Yeah, you've got the Mindspan library. Soon you'll have a pipe and a glass of whiskey, maybe.
Sitting in the library reading with a pipe and whiskey.
It looks like the start of a good murder mystery or a game of Cluedo.
It probably does, yes.
So as I said, this is episode 1 of a 3-part mini-series we're going to be doing around living with purpose. Just to give context to the listeners, we had quite a few questions and requests for goal setting, and as usual with some of these subjects, we just don't really feel half an hour episode can really do justice to such a big important topic like that. So we felt, didn't we, that living with purpose was a brilliant sort of way of leading us into that. So across this mini series, you and I are going to be talking around the huge importance of clarity, the big role that personal values play in the lives that we want to create for ourselves, and also how we can use both of these to live with purpose, to live with real purpose, and actually how that sort of plays in goal setting and sort of creating our future. Mm-hmm. So today we're going to be talking around the clarity element of this. We should always have clarity, right, Dad? I mean, when people don't, we know ourselves from living and breathing this, but for anyone that doesn't know, we have a very directional brain. Our brains, not just you and I, but people, everyone in the world, our brains are very directional. We like to know what's going on, and when we don't have clarity, we have real ambiguity around our lives, the world around us. So I don't really want to get into this. I think it's brilliant if you could explain this because you speak so well. So would you be happy to sort of say kind of, what people might be experiencing if they have a real lack of clarity, and, what are the consequences of this?
Yeah, they're significant, Em, really. And I think all of us at different times of life would experience a lack of clarity, as in we're not sure where we're going, we're not sure what we're doing in life generally. So it's not unique to just a small band of people. I think everyone experiences it at different times. I think the thing to avoid is actually living a life that's full of it. That's the challenge that we have. So yeah, clarity is important. The brain, as you've already said, doesn't really like vagueness and ambiguity. We often experience emotions we don't want to experience when we're so unsure and when we're so uncertain. And actually, on that theme, Em, it's probably just worth, I know I mentioned the whole COVID thing a short while ago, but actually, all of us to some degree are living in a world at the minute where there feels like even more uncertainty.
Oh,
so there's even, because, the governments are making decisions. some industries are under real threat. People's lives have been turned upside down. The norms that had been created over many years, going to work, all that stuff have been challenged. So there's probably even more uncertainty coming from even more ambiguity and vagueness, because big decisions are being made, as I say, by governments that are leading to, we don't know how long this is going to go on for, and we don't know when this is going to end. So and
well, no, you're right, because it's not just right now it's a bit tough and you're going to have to work from home for the time being, and those parents that have had to play part-time teacher roles, there's all these things people have had to do that they haven't planned for, but there's still, there isn't really an end in sight still. So it's not like, oh, this is just for the time being. Well, it is just for the time being, but I mean, we don't have that light at the end of the tunnel yet. You're right. It is an ever kind of, not that we're going to turn this podcast into the turmoil of COVID, but
yeah, indeed.
It's you are right in saying, that there's just a real lack of clarity, more so than normal at the moment.
Yeah, and I think so the reason I mention that is because for a lot of people, those feelings of anxiety, etc., are more vivid and more amplified now than they normally are. But they are an example of the huge impact of uncertainty, the huge impact of vagueness and ambiguity. Consequently, the other end of the spectrum, when we are really clear about stuff, we feel more reassured, we feel more confident. It's easier to make decisions and choices on a daily basis. We feel we invest our energies in more appropriate ways. So I think, COVID aside, because it's amplifying a lot of that stuff, generally, I mean, the amount of times I've met people in conversation, sometimes over a few drinks or a social function or whatever else, the big question comes up and someone says, what do you want out of life? And not always, but it's not uncommon when someone considers that question that I've sometimes seen them give this a sort of shoulder shrug.
Yeah.
And it's sort of I don't know. I'm just a bit too busy to even think about it. Do you know what I mean? And it's very easy to sort of, if I use this as a bit of a metaphor, because it's quite a common one people use, I think so many people feel like they wake up in the morning, they get back on the hamster wheel of life, doing, filling their days full of all sorts of stuff, getting to the end of a working week, feeling absolutely knackered, using that phrase where there's got no fuel left in the tank. And then you sort of ask them, what have you done this week and what have you achieved? And often the response is, I just don't know. I'm just too busy. I'm just too busy doing life to even think about life. And I think that's where a lot of the problem is. If we don't get real clarity about where we are and where we want to get to in life, and be clear about our purpose in its various forms, then that void of purpose gets filled by what society tells you should be doing, or the people around you give you their version. And if we're not careful, we can live to 80 or 90, hopefully, or a healthy age, and look back and think, well, I didn't really live my life. I actually lived someone else's, or I lived the version that everyone else told me I should be living. And so again, the rather than thinking about life when we get to the end of it, reflecting upon it, we always suggest to people we should be thinking about life on the way through it, putting more thought into it, putting more time aside to think about where we're at and where we'd like to be. And if we can establish that real clarity, then we should be able to use that clarity to invest our energies more wisely and to be more purposeful as we go through life, and ultimately live with purpose, because that's a life well spent, in our view.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important when we're saying clarity, it's quite important to sort of emphasize here, not just clarity to the future of what we want in life, because I think, we've discussed this before, it is a bit of a people might very quickly jump to this when thinking they are going to be setting goals of, I know it's bad right now, but I'm just going to think about all this future stuff I want. And, it's important to know what you want in the future, but it's so important and get clarity of future you. But it's really important to get clarity on the now, like you're saying, isn't it? In knowing what's our clear current reality looking like.
Well, I think the obvious version, Em, is if you go to Christmas, New Year time of year, we can be often at a family function or a social function, and someone will say, late December or even coming into early January, have you got any New Year's resolutions for this coming year or next year? And a New Year's resolution is another phrase for or term for a goal or a target or something you want to aim for. And how often, after being asked that question at Christmas or New Year, does someone sort of say, well, I suppose I'd better do this or do that?
Yeah.
Over the next 12 months. And it becomes clear they haven't really thought about it very much. They almost seem, by the way they say it, they don't even want it. And then there's no surprise by mid-January why they're not even focused on it anymore, or the New Year's resolution's fallen by the wayside. So I think the challenge we have is most people don't think about life enough, in our view.
Yeah.
When some people do think about it at Christmas, New Year, under the banner of New Year's resolutions, they think about it momentarily, but it's not been thorough enough. So really, what we're recommending to people is clarity is really important. And long before we get anywhere near setting goals about the future we want to create, or something we want to achieve, or an experience we want to have, we should be thinking thoroughly to establish clarity.
Yeah.
Where we are now first, what is life really like at the moment? And then when we've done that, that should have some part to play in deciding what's our clarity for the future. How do I want it to look, and what do I want it to consist of? And what are my core values? And then some way further down the road in this process, we'd start to set really well constructed goals, but don't go straight to goals.
Yeah. No, I think you might feel similarly to this, but I think it's such a common thing people do when through a good premise of wanting to get something better for themselves, but they're skipping quite a few steps of that would actually make that a lot easier to do, with goal setting.
Well, I think that the word I would use then, we need to have a more robust process.
Yeah, big time.
To move for anybody to be able to move from a place where maybe they're a bit like this, I haven't got a clue where I'm going and what I'm doing in life, right through to having really well-structured goals that have been carefully considered, so that person can live in the foreseeable future a life with purpose.
Yeah.
That's not a 2-minute step. There are a few things that need to happen to be able to move from one end there to the other.
Yeah.
And actually, I think when people can learn that process, they can then engage in that process over and over and over and over again for the remainder of their life, and with the intention of, as I say, getting to later years in life, looking back with a sense of fulfillment, a sense of pride, and a sense of a life well spent, rather than a life that's gone far too quickly, and a life that has loads of regrets in it, and a life that's been wasted.
Yeah.
Big stuff, big philosophical stuff here, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very big philosophical stuff. So, for the listeners, we are. I know we're talking about a robust process, a robust, methodology of getting there. We will be sharing some of this, won't we, Dad? With over the next sort of few episodes. So do you have? Bringing it to you, what advice would you give somebody to gain clarity on themselves at the moment? Because it's a bit of it could probably be quite overwhelming for people. To think, well, I don't know where to start.
Well, we when we started talking about goal setting as a subject matter, because we'd been asked by quite a few people, this is why we decided not to just have a goal setting episode, so to speak, of the podcast. We actually want that to fit into this greater subject around purpose in life. And I guess if we over the 3 episodes in this mini series, we're probably going to go through 3 to 4 steps in this process, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
And they'll span the 3 episodes. And really, for today, I wanted to raise the importance of clarity. And actually, where we're going to start with clarity is with what we would call our clear current reality. Mm-hmm. So, as I said a little while ago, rather than asking ourselves or asking someone else, where's your life at the moment? Because that's quite a big high level question. What we're probably going to get from somebody or ourselves is a big high level answer. So, someone's going to probably respond to that question with, oh, life's all right, or life's not very good,
Yeah.
or it's brilliant. So you're going to get just a high level a sentence around their evaluation of life at the minute. But that doesn't give anybody the level of clarity they need to really start to invest their energies even more wisely. So we often use something within Mindspan that we call a life audit exercise. And I know, having been in this subject matter for many years, there are lots of variations on this, that other coaches and trainers and people like Tony Robbins and others will use. But really, it's around, rather than asking ourselves or someone else, what's life like at the minute, we need to break life down into a whole load of what we would call life areas.
Yeah.
So we break life down into areas such as, and these aren't in any order of importance, they're just as they enter my head, really. So we can look at our overarching career. That's an area of life. We can look at and consider our day-to-day work. That's another area of life. We can look at our health. We can look at our fitness. We can look at our hobbies and leisure. We can look at the home and property aspects of our lives. We can look at finance. We can look at relationships, both the people we're close to. That could be our partner, or it could be our family, it could be our social network, it could be our work relationships. So we can look at relationships in different forms. We can look at ourselves slightly more spiritually in terms of an area of life. We can look at we can basically
the categories could go on and on, couldn't they?
Yeah, they can. And what we always encourage is, don't have 50, don't break life down, because that's rather too arduous. But we tend to work at sometimes looking at between half a dozen and a dozen or so areas of life, chunky areas of life, and to consider those. And the aspect of consideration for us always is, how satisfied are you with that area of your life as of this moment?
Yeah.
So whenever you're doing that, whenever you're going through this audit, that could be at midday, it could be 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it could be at 2 o'clock in the morning with a glass of wine, whenever it is, how satisfied are you with that area of your life as of this moment? So I say that could be your finance, could be relationships, could be any other part of your life.
And just to interject here, just so I know what you mean, but just for people listening, you're sort of talking around a score system. So let's just say 0. I mean, 1 is not at all, 10 being extremely. Yeah,
we tend to use that scale, don't we? Of 1 would be very dissatisfied, 10 would be incredibly satisfied, or it could be any number in between. It could be a 4, it could be a 7, whatever. And as with most of these evaluative sort of exercises, it's not to overanalyze it, not to deliberate too long and hard. I mean, you wouldn't, if I was considering career for myself, I wouldn't be thinking, I wouldn't spend half an hour deciding whether that was a 7 or an 8.
Yeah, it's really what, almost a gut feeling, isn't it?
What is that? What number to gauge your, to represent your level of satisfaction pops into your head pretty quickly. Yeah. And then go with that. So it's not a scientific exercise. It's obviously subjective, but usually our gut and the quick response is our gut response. Our quick response is usually the most honest. Yeah. And just to evaluate those different areas of life in terms of your current level of satisfaction with them, between 1 and 10, 1 incredibly low, 10 very high, and anything in between. And then, so that's one rating or score we like to give in terms of that life audit. And then the other one is to then also evaluate the level of focus and energy that you're giving each area of life sort of currently. It's not uncommon, it's not always the case, but it's not uncommon to have a low satisfaction score and also a low focus score. We're just not really investing much of ourselves in that part of our life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We tend to encourage people and ourselves to, when we're going through a life audit, to rate how satisfied we are with different areas of life and how much focus we give those different areas of life. Those are the two bits of criteria we think are really important to establish our clear current reality. How do I really feel about my life at the moment?
Yeah. I think though, I mean, I'm just going to talk about personal experience here when I first did this. Because obviously I know I'm using this now as a coach and sort of mentor, but when I first did this myself as an actual, what would
Your
I
own exercise,
as a sort of my own version of this, before I'd really gotten into mindset in the way that I have now, I had a really big reality check because you just don't really, you're right. People don't just very often really think about how happy they are with all different areas unless something's really wrong.
Yeah.
You know, in a relationship, someone might suddenly go, do you know what? It's all gotten too much for me and I don't want this anymore. But actually, you know, putting on paper in front of you visually how you feel about everything going on in your life. And it's mad to think, really, because it's your life, like you're living it, but you're just not thinking about it. So when I first ever did this, you know, I really think I gained a bit of clarity, which is, you know, good considering what we're talking about, on a lot that was happening. So at the time, this was, you know, when I was in a full-time marketing role in London, not in, you know, pre-self-employed life. And I was working so much that I all my man hours were going into that. So my percentage of sort of perceived focus and energy that was going into that felt like about 100. I didn't really feel like I had any other part of me to give to any other aspect of my life. But I was really, my satisfaction score was so low because, and I didn't know why at the time, because I was working so hard, spending so much time on it, giving it everything I've got, but I didn't really know why my satisfaction score was actually about 3.
Which is surprising, Anne, because at the time you were well thought of, your career was going in a really good direction. Your career, by most people's perception, was, wow, that's going really, really well. But you weren't actually that satisfied with it because actually your life balance was so poor.
There's 2 things to this. My life balance was the biggest, being very poor, because when I then went on to looking at, you know, my relationships, so with friends and whatnot, that again, that satisfaction score was quite low because I was giving about 0% of my focus and energy to it because I didn't feel I had any more resource left outside of, you know, the work side of things. So other areas of my life were suffering because I wasn't giving them anything. I don't mean giving my friends physically something. I mean giving time to people. So, you know, but as you say, Dad, like my, you know, on paper, people were saying, oh, work's going so well. But, and I know we're going to come on to personal values in the next episode, but it became really prominent for me when I realized the reason I was, you know, even though I was working a lot of hours, passion, which was later established as a big, you know, core value of mine, I didn't have that passion about the job I was doing. So even though success rate looked probably good on paper, I didn't have a burning desire to help supermarkets sell broccoli, which is essentially what I was doing at the time. But I don't think people really realize until they do something like a life audit or really take the time to step back and evaluate their lives.
Well, I think the interesting thing, Em, is that it sounds a bit of a heavy thing, doing a life audit. It sounds like a big exercise. The version we normally do with people takes minutes. As long as they're honest. And it's, in our view, it's absolutely essential to know where you are at the minute before you start thinking about the future, because what you think about the future and how you invest your energies into the future to create a really well-balanced, purposeful life, we should be learning from what's going on at the minute, you know, where we need to invest our energy. So I tend to do, and we always encourage people to do a life audit about 3 or 4 times a year, every 3 or 4 months. It takes minutes. And sometimes I'll do a life audit and I think, that life's pretty much where I thought it was in its various forms. But there'll be other times I do a life audit, and even though I've been doing this for years, I get a surprise. I'll sometimes look at an area of life and think, well, I've given that a much higher satisfaction score than I thought I would. And then I sort of think about, I reflect and think, and I then start to be really grateful for how it's improved or something. And then equally, as the opposite has happened, where I've sometimes thought, wow, why have I scored that area so low? And then I start to investigate it and look at it and think, it's because of this, and I've been running around in life really busy, not that aware. So what a life audit exercise really helps us with is to gain that clear current reality, to get away from vagueness and ambiguity about how life is at the minute, and to get really clear. And then, obviously, as you've said a little while ago, and we'll cover this in episodes sort of 2 and 3 of this mini series, we then start to look at some other aspects of clarity, core values, future clarity, and we can use all of that to make sure we finally live with goals and to create well-balanced purpose that has been carefully considered and is not a knee-jerk reaction like Christmas, New Year, and a New Year's resolution. We want to be able to follow.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, in some degree, to some degree, people do things like this, but just not about their lives. Like, you wouldn't think twice about having, an appraisal at work or targets and feedback on performance at work. Not just performance at work, but there are areas of our lives that we are having, sort of things constructed for, but this is sort of giving the power to you around around to yourself around what's gonna happen and what do you want. And I've personally, just again from my experience of doing these, I think you really know yourself better when you are doing it.
Definitely. And I think we just ultimately the aim, and this is well balanced and living with a well balanced life and living with purpose means, for us anyway, is we're investing our energies every single day. And when I say energies, mental, emotional, physical energies, every day in what we have decided is the right stuff.
Yeah.
The amount of people that I meet, certainly doing this for a living, and I'm not slighting them, they just help, sometimes we just help people to come to these conclusions, is they are just wasting their energies. And actually, they're also wasting time, and they're often also just wasting life. So if we say if people say, life's valuable, life's really important, good. It's good that we say that, but let's live like we mean it.
Yeah.
Let's live like we mean it and start behaving like we mean it by putting some thought into it. And as I say, we're pretty passionate about this subject because life is incredibly valuable, and we might even get a bit on a soapbox a little bit in some of these little mini episodes, but it's all with a view to, and it's well intended, has a positive intention, just to, I guess, almost positively stir people up a little bit and say, come on, what are we doing? What are you doing in life? Are you living with purpose? Do you know where you want to go? Do you know what you want to create? Do you know what you want to shape for your loved ones if you have them? And it can't, it doesn't mean we can create all of that in 5 minutes, but let's really think carefully about it so that we don't just reflect and think about life at the end of it. We're putting really good thought into life on the way through it.
And I think it, it is really hard to set goals that you're going to meet when you don't know, when you haven't looked yourself in the mirror in the present. I've got a client.
That's why I've not been short of clients over the years who might have tried a bit of goal setting and they just say, well, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's not that it doesn't work, because you've got a brain that wants to be focused on things. That's the way the teleological brain works, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
So we need to think about it more robustly. Let's not just make up a goal today and then wonder why next week we're not motivated to create it or achieve it. It's because we haven't really thought it through, and it probably isn't congruent with our values. That's why we're going to have a whole episode on values next time.
Yeah, definitely. That's just quickly, as I was going to say, I had a one-to-one client that when they came to me, they sort of said, I've got the best intentions. I want to, I write these goals and I write all these things that I'm going to do. But I never do any of them, and I don't know why. And I don't feel the spark that I should. I know I should do them, but I don't, but I'm not fulfilling them. And they'd, the present sort of scenario for them was almost too painful to look at.
Okay.
That it was like, I know it's just, I'm not trying to have foul language here, but it's really shit right now. And I don't like to think about it. It really upsets me. It's what they said. I just don't like to look at what's going on. It's rubbish. It upsets me. I just want it to be better. But you need to work out,
what's not right now.
What's not right.
Bits that aren't working. Yeah.
From that, you can then create sort of almost a list of wants and don't wants based on what you're experiencing, and obviously got them to go through the process, and they're a different person now. And it's such a, as I say, it's a very simple stage to the process, but it's really important. So just to kind of, because I mean, I know you and I could probably talk for hours and hours on end about this.
We sometimes do.
We sometimes do, but
Yeah.
we probably wouldn't have a good listenership rates if we did.
Yeah, 8 podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So would you just be happy to kind of sort of round up what we've said and just kind of give a bit of an overview?
Yeah, just 2 or 3 sort of summaries really from today's conversation. One, around just we want everyone to realize the huge importance of clarity and how the brain responds well to clarity, and it responds less well to vagueness and ambiguity. And when we are clear in its various forms, we have that real clarity. We feel more confident, we feel more reassured, and our decisions and choice making is much easier. When we don't have clarity and we have vagueness and ambiguity, we have uncertainty, we more like to have more anxiety, more confusion. And of course, both ends of that spectrum exist in the world. What we're trying to do is help people more consciously point themselves in the clarity direction. Yeah. And long before, let's not have a knee-jerk reaction in life and just willy-nilly set some goals that we think are the right goals or that other people have told us we should set. Let's think it through. Let's have a more robust process that we can learn, practice, and then live. Because, as an example, I live this process and have been doing for some years. It doesn't mean I achieve everything I want to in life, but actually it does mean I invest my energies wisely most of the time and do achieve more of the things, a pretty high percentage of the goals that we tend to set ourselves. So clarity is really important because we want to be able to live with purpose and have a well-balanced life. Today's episode really is how do we create our clear current reality, which is how do we get real sense of where we are in life now. It's to undertake a life audit 3 or 4 times a year. And there are many forms of this exercise, but the one we advocate is actually breaking life down into a whole load of areas that I mentioned earlier, and consider each area carefully, but quite quickly, around how satisfied are you with that part of your life at the moment, as of today, 1 being on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being very dissatisfied, 10 being incredibly satisfied, or it could be any number in between. And you do that for each area of life. And also start to consider as well, 2, how much focus and energy you're giving each area of life at the minute as well, too.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, were you?
No, I was just going to say, and what that does, it's that's step 1, and that really then creates the foundation for steps 2, 3, and 4, where we're going to start to consider our core values, and then we start to think about the future. Then we can give ourselves permission to think about establishing our clear future reality, as we call it, and then starting to set goals and living with purpose.
Yeah, no, definitely. You did that very well. Well
Thanks.
done, Dad. I was
my apprenticeship.
Yeah, yes. So I was just going to say, for anyone that is listening that this might resonate with a little bit, if you want any help or advice sort of on gaining clarity a bit more and talking to us about it, we're more than happy to help and speak to you. Equally, if you really want to undertake a even bigger project in yourself and think I need more help with this, again, we do offer coaching. I know we don't really talk about all the different things we do from a business point of view in these, but it's just letting people know that we're here if you need, and if it's something you want to invest in, we're here basically.
We are
indeed. So thank you so much for your time today, Dad, and for sort of explaining things as nicely as you did.
Well, hopefully it came across in a way where people can get it. That's the trick for you and I, isn't it? We have conversations about stuff, but always trying to keep it simple as we can, so people can go and do something with it. So it's been a pleasure, Em. It's lovely to chat with you. You know how much I enjoy doing these with yourself.
Oh, thanks, Dad.
Shut
up, you. Okay, well, we'll be back again in 2 weeks with a follow-on sort of part 2 of this mini series on living with purpose, and we'll be going over sort of creating those big personal, internal, sort of intrinsic values, and it's big stuff, but it's really exciting. So if you're interested, then stay tuned. We'll be back again in 2 weeks. I thought you were about to say goodbye. So I will say goodbye.
Sorry, Em. Sorry.
Goodbye,
goodbye, everybody.
It's fine. Goodbye, everyone.
You did it for me.
And speak to you all soon.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the latest episode of What's the Matter. My dad and I are going to be back again in another 2 weeks with the follow-up episode to this 3-part series. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of the week.